Welcome to our deep dive. Today, we're really plunging into something that's been making waves. People are calling it a political earthquake in New York City. We're talking about the recent Democratic mayoral primary there.
Yeah, it's a big one.
And for those of you who follow politics closely, you'll know this isn't just about New York, right? It feels like maybe a test case, a living lab for how grassroots energy can really shake things up.
Absolutely. Against, an entrenched power, even when the odds seem stacked against you.
Exactly. Campaign managers everywhere must be looking at this, trying to figure it out. We're talking, of course, about Zohran Mamdani. He's 33, a Democratic socialist.
Right.
And he pulled off this really stunning victory against former Governor Andrew Cuomo. I mean, Cuomo, well, a well-known figure, let's say, but also, carrying some baggage from the past, a sort of icon of the party's older guard.
Yeah, definitely an icon and definitely baggage. So our mission today really is to unpack this primary result. We want to dig into it. We'll look at Mamdani's campaign. It was pretty unique, his style, his platform, and then the reactions, right, from Democrats, Republicans. What are they saying? And what does it all mean? For the bigger picture, politics nationally, especially with the general election coming up. So by the end of this, you should have a much clearer idea of not just what happened in New York, but why it's significant.
Okay, so building on that initial shock, let's really break down how this upset happened. Because Mamdani was facing Andrew Cuomo.
A giant.
A total giant, right. Universal name recognition, huge amounts of money, backing from party leaders, unions, the works.
Yeah.
So how on earth did Mamdani manage to overcome all that? That's the fascinating part.
It really is quite a story. And the contrast, I think, tells us a lot. Mamdani had a clear lead on primary night. And Cuomo conceded publicly. He even, interestingly, praised Mamdani for inspiring young voters. But it wasn't just a win. It showed two totally different ways of campaigning clashing. Mamdani was all about these progressive demands, right? Change for a city really struggling with affordability.
A huge issue there.
Massive. And then you had Cuomo, former Mayor Bill de Blasio, called his effort a very negative, fear-based campaign.
Right, I remember hearing that.
And the result just sort of laid bare how ineffective Cuomo's whole approach was. He had the establishment backing, the TV ads blanketing everything.
The traditional playbook.
Exactly, the traditional playbook.
Yeah.
But it just couldn't compete with Mamdani's.
Yeah.
This organic groundswell. The energy was just different.
That makes a lot of sense. The old way just didn't cut through the noise or maybe didn't connect. And what's really interesting, as you said, is Mamdani wasn't just doing more campaigning. It sounds like he was doing it differently. People are calling it the first draft of a new playbook.
Yeah, that's the phrase going around.
So what was in this playbook? What was his approach and why did it resonate so much?
Well, his style was definitely distinctive. It's been called viral, go anywhere, talk to anyone, that kind of thing.
Okay.
It really seemed to focus on authenticity and aggressiveness, too, which felt new.
How so? What did that look like on the ground?
Well, for example, he actually sat down for interviews with people who, totally disagreed with him. He didn't shy away from that.
That takes guts.
It does. And also, strategically smart, he engaged in cross-endorsements with rivals, which in a ranked choice voting system.
Ah, right. Ranked choice. That changes the game.
It really does. So encouraging his supporters to rank other progressives highly. That helped consolidate votes as candidates dropped out. Made it harder for Cuomo to pick up those second or third choices.
Clever.
Very. And he was just out there. He walked the entire length of Manhattan one Friday.
The whole length. Wow.
Yeah. Imagine the conversations, just meeting people where they are. He put it pretty well on social media somewhere. He said, New Yorkers deserve a mayor they can see, hear, even yell at. The city is in the streets.
That's quite a statement. Very different from staying in controlled environments. Okay, so that's the style. What about the substance? His platform. What were the core ideas driving this?
Well, and this ties into the playbook, too, I think. His platform wasn't just, tweaking things. It felt like a direct answer to how expensive New York is.
The affordability crisis again?
Exactly. So his key positions included things like freezing rents, free public transit, even proposing city-run grocery stores.
Wow, okay. Those are big ideas.
They are. Not small adjustments. It's really challenging the economic status quo in the city. And it suggests that for a lot of voters, especially maybe younger ones, the sort of standard Democratic answers on affordability just aren't enough anymore.
Which is a huge point, considering affordability is a major issue nationally for Democrats in recent elections.
Precisely. It's a big vulnerability. And Mamdani tapped right into that frustration.
But that aggressive, authentic style you mentioned, it must have faced tests, right? Especially on really divisive issues. How did he handle criticism? I'm thinking particularly about his stance on Israel, which is always such a flashpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a major point of attack. He was a very vocal critic of Israel's war in Gaza. And he didn't back down even when he faced criticism, including charges of anti-Semitism, which he strongly denied.
Right.
He even defended using the phrase globalize the intifada, which is, a highly charged term.
Very controversial.
Extremely. But he did address the fears directly. He went on Stephen Colbert's show on CBS and acknowledged the fear in the Jewish community, especially after the October 7th attack by Hamas. He said something like, "There's no room for violence in this city, in this country, in this world," and added that he found New Yorkers could navigate disagreement. So he didn't run from the controversy.
He faced it head on.
Seems like it. And it's worth noting, too, the support he got from someone like Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, big endorsement from the progressive wing.
AOC.
Yeah. She posted something like, "Billionaires and lobbyists poured millions against you, and you won," really framing it as David versus Goliath.
Meanwhile, the more establishment figure.
They stayed out of it, publicly anyway. Governor Hochul, Senators Gillibrand and Schumer.
They were neutral, which itself says something about the divisions, maybe, within the party in New York.
Definitely highlights a split. So let's zoom out. Beyond New York City, what does this tell us? Is this Mamdani when a sign of a broader shift in the Democratic Party? Or is it maybe just, a unique New York thing?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And folks within the party are definitely debating it. You had Dan Pfeiffer, who used to be a top aide to President Obama.
Okay, I know the name.
He said on social media that Democrats have a lot to learn from Mamdani. He basically said what's happening in New York is a blaringly loud message to the party establishment.
A message about what?
About clinging to, quote, old politics, using focus grouped talking points and being too afraid to say what needs to be said. That suggests, a hunger in the base for something more direct, maybe more bold, especially on the economy.
So some soul-searching happening on the Democratic side. What about the Republicans? I imagine they had thoughts. Oh, they certainly did. Predictably, maybe. They seemed pretty thrilled.
Oh, how so?
Well, the NRCC, the House GOP's campaign arm, put out a press release right away. They declared Mamdani the new face of the Democratic Party.
Okay, that sounds like a classic attack line.
Exactly. The spokesperson, Mike Marinella, said something like, "Every vulnerable House Democrat will own him, and every Democrat running in a primary will fear him."
So they see him as a liability for Democrats elsewhere.
Totally. They see an opening to campaign against his ideas, things they frame as unpopular with swing voters. They're comparing his proposals to the Green New Deal, that kind of thing.
But does that really work in New York City itself?
Probably not much in the mayoral race itself. I mean, Democrats outnumber Republicans there by, what, 6-1? Something
Right,
like that.
huge margin.
But New York State does have several competitive House districts, especially on Long Island and upstate.
Ah, okay, so that's where the strategy might play out.
Potentially, yes. They could try to tie Democratic candidates in those races to Mamdani's positions, try to put them on the defensive, paint the whole party with that brush.
Makes sense. So it's complicated.
It's definitely too soon to sort of fully unpack what Mamdani's win means for the whole Democratic Party. But it certainly gave us a snapshot, didn't it? A glimpse of where the party stands on key issues and maybe who's really connecting with voters right now.
Okay, so connecting this all to the next step.
Yeah.
The general election in November. What does Mamdani's primary win mean for that? You'd think, given NYC's Democratic lean, he'd be the favorite, but you hinted it's more complex.
Yeah, it's definitely not straightforward. The whole race is going to have, completely different dynamics now.
How so?
Well, the big curveball is the current mayor, Eric Adams. He was elected as a Democrat 4 years ago, right?
Right.
But now, he's running for re-election as an independent.
As an independent, wow. Why the switch?
Well, there was some fallout. Remember the Justice Department investigation into his campaign fundraising? Trump's DOJ eventually dropped the charges.
I remember that, yeah.
And Adams has also cooperated with federal authorities on Trump's mass deportation efforts. So, facing that backlash, he's broken from the party.
Okay, so Adams is running as an independent. What's his pitch?
He posted his platform basically saying New York deserves a mayor, proud of his record, someone who will keep driving down crime, support the police, fight anti-Semitism, stand up for working-class New Yorkers. He's positioning himself maybe as a more centrist law and order alternative.
So you've got Mamdani, the Democratic Socialist primary winner, facing Adams, the incumbent Democrat turned independent. That's already fascinating.
It really is. Think about the potential vote splits. Adams might pull from the center, maybe even some moderate Republicans or conservative Democrats. Mamdani holds the progressive base.
Who else is running? Is there a Republican nominee?
Yes. Curtis Sliwa. You might remember him from the Guardian Angels. He ran before. He was unopposed in the Republican primary, so it'd be the GOP nominee. He offers that traditional Republican alternative.
Okay, Sliwa's in. Any other wrinkles?
One more interesting point. Before the primary, neither Cuomo nor Mamdani had actually ruled out running in November on a different party line if they lost the Democratic primary.
Really?
Yeah. Cuomo had this newly created Fight and Deliver party line potentially available. And Mamdani could have run on the Working Families Party line, which often backs progressives.
So theoretically, we could have had an even more crowded field, though Cuomo conceded.
Right, Cuomo conceded the primary. But Mamdani could still potentially use the WFP line, perhaps in addition to the Democratic line, depending on rules or if something weird happened. But the main contest looks like Mamdani, Adams, and Sliwa.
A three-way race, potentially four if other minor parties get involved. With an independent incumbent, that's going to be unpredictable.
Absolutely. Vote splits could be wild. Someone could win with a relatively low percentage.
Yeah.
It makes the general election in this deep blue city suddenly look, well, really interesting strategically.
Wow. Okay, so this deep dive into the NYC primary, it's really shown us a lot, hasn't it? How one election can mirror these bigger political trends, maybe even push them forward. We've seen this challenge to the establishment, this new campaign playbook you talked about, and maybe a real shift in what voters, especially in cities, are prioritizing. Authenticity, aggressive solutions.
Yeah, it really brings up a big question, doesn't it? For you listening, think about this. If this Mamdani win is a sign that voters, maybe particularly younger voters, are looking for something different, if they're demanding more tangible, maybe even radical solutions to problems like affordability, and they're looking beyond just traditional party labels, what does that really tell us? How might political parties and the candidates themselves need to fundamentally change how they connect, how they campaign, to actually energize people going forward, something to chew on?